Why did Germans hate the American M1 Garand, or Grand? If you want to start a fight in the comments, the man who designed the rifle pronounced it Garand, so that's what we're going with. Now, however you say it, this rifle was something truly special when it appeared during the Second World War, and for a lot of reasons we're about to get into. So let's start right at the beginning. Before start this video, we are requested to subscribe to our channel for more historical video and hit the bell icon for our upcoming videos notifications. When the First World War ended, the United States Army took a hard look at how infantry combat had actually played out. The battlefield had been dominated by machine guns and artillery, while the standard American rifleman armed with a bolt-action Springfield M19-3 could only fire as fast as he could manually work the bolt. That limitation wasn't unique to the US. Virtually every major army in the world was in the same position. The army concluded that infantry firepower simply wasn't keeping up with modern warfare. What they wanted was a rifle that could give individual soldiers a much higher sustained rate of fire without the weight, complexity, and crew requirements of a light machine gun. So in 1919, the US Army officially began searching for a semi-automatic service rifle. At the time, semi-automatic rifles weren't some futuristic concept. Commercial manufacturers like Remington and Winchester had been producing semi-automatic sporting rifles since as early as 1905. The Chief of Ordnance even stated outright that the Army was ready to evaluate a semi-automatic rifle as soon as someone submitted a workable design. So why did it still take more than 3 decades for the US military to actually adopt one? The answer comes down to a single cartridge, the .36 Springfield. The Army was deeply committed to this round, and for good reason. It had been tested to ranges of up to 100 yards and was considered effective even beyond that, but all that performance came at a cost. The .36 generated extremely high chamber pressures, required a heavy powder charge, and resulted in a long cartridge case. A self-loading rifle has to contain all that pressure while also managing a heavy bolt cycling back and forth at high speed. Early semi-automatic designs simply couldn't handle that stress. Rifles like the Remington Model 8, chambered in .35 Remington, were designed for medium-sized game inside 200 yards. From the Army's perspective, that was completely inadequate. Designing a semi-automatic action strong enough to reliably fire a full-power military cartridge meant building a rifle that was simply too large and too heavy for general infantry use. Trials throughout the 1910s and early 1920s evaluated numerous candidates, including foreign designs like the Danish Bang rifle and various domestic experiments. None of them could successfully balance durability, weight, and reliability under the brutal demands of the .30-06. Then, in 1999, John Cantier's Garand arrived at Springfield Armory and brought with him the rifle the Army couldn't ignore. Garand's real breakthrough came when he turned to a gas-operated system. His design tapped a small amount of propellant gas from the fired cartridge into a cylinder mounted beneath the barrel. These gases drove a piston and operating rod that cycled the bolt, ejecting the spent case and chambering a fresh round. This system used the rifle's own energy to do the work, distributing the forces in a way that avoided overstressing the components. It solved the fundamental mechanical problem that had defeated every previous attempt. Through the mid-1920s and into the early 1930s, the Army ran repeated competitive trials. Again and again, Garand's gas-operated rifles stood out. But this is where things get interesting. During this period, the Army seriously considered abandoning the R30-06 entirely. They tested a lighter cartridge known as the .276 Pedersen, which made semi-automatic operation easier to engineer and allowed soldiers to carry more ammunition. The round performed very well, and in 1930, the .276 caliber Garand actually received formal recommendations for adoption. But it never happened. Senior leadership rejected the new caliber on logistical and economic grounds. The United States still had massive stockpiles of .30-06 ammunition left over from the First World War, and in the middle of the Great Depression, no one wanted to fund an entirely new ammunition supply chain. So Garand was sent back once again to adapt his rifle to the heavier, higher-pressure .30-06 cartridge. After years of trials, revisions, and internal debate, the rifle was formally adopted on January 9, 1936. This marked the first time any major military power had standardized a semi-automatic rifle as its primary infantry weapon. While most other nations would enter the Second World War still issuing bolt-action rifles, the United States was positioning itself a full generation ahead, and it didn't waste time scaling up production. By June of 1941, just months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Ordnance Department was producing roughly 1,000 M1 rifles every single day. Before getting into combat, it's worth explaining how the rifle actually works, because a lot of misconceptions still exist. The most distinctive feature of the M1 is its M-block clip system. Army leadership rejected detachable box magazines because they believed soldiers would lose them in the field, and because the magazine opening could allow dirt and debris into the action. Instead, Garand designed a fixed internal magazine fed by a stamped steel M-block clip, a U-shaped piece of metal that held 8 rounds. To load it, the shooter locks the bolt open, presses the loaded clip down into the receiver from the top until it clicks into place, then slightly retracts and releases the bolt. The bolt snaps forward, strips the top round, and chambers it. Each pull of the trigger fires a round and automatically cycles the action. As the follower rises, the next round feeds. When the final round is fired, the follower trips the clip latch and the empty clip is ejected straight up out of the receiver with that unmistakable metallic ping. The bolt remains locked open, clearly signaling that the rifle is empty. You've probably heard the claim that this ping sound gave away a soldier's position. But think about what that would actually require. A lone soldier at extremely close range, in the middle of battle, where the enemy could hear, recognize, and react to that sound over gunfire, explosions, and shouting. In reality, combat was overwhelmingly loud. Soldiers fought in groups. Veterans consistently reported that the ping was barely audible beyond a few feet. While stories exist of soldiers tossing empty clips to bait enemies into exposing themselves, it's unclear how often that actually happened. Then there's the infamous Garand thumb. If a soldier failed to control the bolt properly while loading, the operating rod could snap forward with enough force to crush the thumb painfully. It wasn't especially common in combat, but it happened often enough during training that it earned a lasting reputation. You learned the technique quickly, or you learned it painfully. When the M1 finally went to war, its advantages were immediate. A rifleman could fire all 8 rounds as fast as he could pull the trigger without shifting his grip, breaking his cheek weld, or losing his sight picture. The practical rate of aimed fire increased by roughly 2.5 to 3 times compared to bolt-action rifles. Still, skepticism remained. Veteran troops doubted reliability. Officers worried about complexity. Early logistical errors even resulted in Springfield stripper clips being sent to Garand-equipped units. The rifle's first serious battlefield test came in the South Pacific in 1942. At Guadalcanal, most Marines initially carried older rifles, but once Garands reached the front, opinions changed rapidly. The M1 proved just as reliable as the Springfield and easy to maintain, even in harsh jungle conditions. Japanese troops quickly noticed the dramatic increase in American firepower, often mistaking massed semi-automatic rifle fire for machine guns. Tactics that had worked elsewhere became devastatingly ineffective. Then the Germans encountered the Garand during Operation Torch in November 1942. Despite popular imagery, the vast majority of German soldiers carried bolt-action Kar-98 Kate rifles. Over 14 million were produced, compared to about 1.1 million Mi-40s, 403,000 Stige 46 44s, and only 7 million FJ 46. German doctrine centered on the machine gun, with riflemen supporting it. American doctrine emphasized the individual rifleman. In individual engagements, this gave US troops a decisive advantage. Germany tried to respond. The Gordy 1 failed catastrophically due to its muzzle trap system. The improved Gordy 3 was better, but arrived too late and in far too few numbers. About 400,000 were produced, compared to 5.4 million Garands. The Soviets suffered reliability issues and was phased out. Britain stayed with the Lee Enfield. The M1 succeeded where others failed because it balanced power, reliability, and simplicity in a way no competitor could match. It could also fire rifle grenades using the Meson launcher, extending infantry reach without mortars. While this temporarily disabled semi-automatic fire, it gave squads flexible firepower. The rifle wasn't perfect, it was heavy, about 10 pounds loaded, over 11 with bayonet, and you couldn't easily top off a partial clip. These limitations eventually led to its replacement. The Mir-14 solved some problems but created new ones. It was heavier, harder to control, and poorly suited for jungle warfare. By 1969, it was replaced by the M16. Ironically, the Germans had already identified the future intermediate cartridges. The Stage 44's concept influenced modern assault rifles worldwide. John Garand received the Medal for Merit on March 28, 1944, personally from President Roosevelt. It was the highest civilian honor of its time, awarded to the man whose rifle gave American soldiers a decisive edge.